In this tutorial, we're going to learn how you can easily make gorgeous custom interiors in Blender. We're going to learn to do a little camera fly through, and we're eventually even going to fill this whole thing up with custom models. So grab yourself a drink, get comfy, and let's get stuck in. So for this, we're going to be using a built-in add-on. So if we go to Edit Preferences, we're looking for this Archimesh add-on. If you don't see it in your add-ons tab, you can have a look and get extensions and install it from there. So when that's in, you want to add a reference image and you want to grab blueprints. So I've grabbed a blueprint of my house from when I moved in a couple of years ago, and I'm going to be using this for the basis of mine, but obviously feel free to grab a blueprint of whatever you like. You can make your own model, make your own house if you like. And then on this Archimesh, we're going to go in here and we're going to click show so we can see the measurements on our walls. And then we're going to click room to add our first wall in there. So we'll go ahead, we'll line this up with the corner of our blueprints, just like that. And we're going to want to scale this blueprint up so that we can kind of follow it to scale. But first off, we're going to scale this wall up and use that as a basis to measure it. So we'll flip that around so the baseboard's on the inside, and then we'll click up here and change that length to 4.66, which is the length of my inner ground floor wall. And yes, I did go in and measure my whole house, which is quite fun. Also a little bit taller, so we'll add a bit to the height at the top there. You can also add in a baseboard, which we're going to do, and you've got an option for a wall cover, which if we have a little look in here, we'll add this kind of like wooden cladding to the outside of your house, which is great if you're making like a US style house, or like a cabin or a shed or something like that. You've also got controls here, so you can kind of play with this and get the look that you want. If you want like a half a cover or something similar, feel free to play with that. But as I live in the UK, my house doesn't look like this, so I'm not going to use that myself. What we can also do then is add a bit of thickness to our wall. So up here, we're going to make this outer wall a little bit chunky. And again, I measured mine to be 0.36. So there we go. Our house is looking quite chunky. And then we just want to go ahead and add some more walls. So if we move this up to 2, you'll see it's added a corner there. The baseboard's kind of followed it round, but obviously we want it to go the other way. So what we can do is change the length of this wall number 2, and you can actually give it a negative value if you want it to go the other way. So if we go just like that, and you'll see there, but obviously my measurements were on the inside. So if you click this inverse button, then it'll flip where your measurements are. So we want to make sure those are on the inside. And we can obviously go the other way if we wanted to, but that inverse is always going to kind of keep the same direction. So just like that is fine. We'll go back to a negative value to line up with our blueprint. Just like that. Perfect. With the baseboard then, this works similarly. You can see the way we've got it round at the moment. The positive values are actually going through the wall, which we don't want. We want to give this a negative value. And not quite that chunky. About 0.015 is perfect. There you go. Now we've got a baseboard on the inside of our wall, which is great. Just like that. So now we want to line up our blueprint with the outline of our house, basically. And obviously this is much easier to scale to size when you've got the corner shape already in. So we'll just line that up. And then we're basically just going to use this blueprint as a guideline for our internal walls as we go. We'll just build them on top and check the measurements afterwards. So if we go back to our room, we pop this number of walls up to 4. And then we just want to put the inverse of the values we've already got. So it's a negative 4.66 and positive 8.63. And there we go. We've got the outer walls of our house done. Now, to add the inner walls, we just want to click room, and that'll add another one in. And you're just going to follow these lines around the inside, and obviously give them the same height and give them a bit of thickness. We'll be looking for I think about 0.08 is what I measured my thickness as, and I've gone ahead and measured all my walls, so I'm going to use exact measurements for mine. But you can just use your blueprint and just kind of follow those walls along. So go ahead and fill out all of the walls in the ground floor, which is what we're going to do here. And I'll just finish this off and just follow the exact same process to do that. And then finally, we'll just line our walls up and make sure that we've got no weird gaps or clipping on the edges of our rooms. And we'll carry out that same process and finish up the whole ground floor. And a little tip while you're doing this, if you want to be really precise in your measurements, if you go to object mode, there's a measure tool, which you can see on the left, or you can hit shift space and then M, and it'll give you this measure tool, and you can measure these angles pretty accurately. It's sometimes hard with one of these directional views, but if you look kind of from the side a little bit, it's much easier to measure. Once you're happy with what you've got on your ground floor, it's up to you. You can kind of leave it there. For me, I've got a first floor in my house as well, and I'm going to kind of model out my whole house ideally. So I'm going to go ahead and add the reference image and do exactly the same process for my first floor and map that out as well. So that's my first floor, my ground floor, looking good, ready to go. Quite happy with how they've turned out. Obviously the next thing we need to do is add in some doorways. So if we hide this room section, just click on door, and that'll add in a door complete with door frame, handle, everything ready to go. Annoyingly, you can't move this straight away. You'll have to grab the door group in the top right. But then you can move that to where you want it. So we'll just have a little look at our see-through view and line that up as if it was going to be the front door, and we'll take a look at this. So you might notice straight away you've got some boxes around this. There is an auto holes button on your walls, which basically means that these holes will control where that button puts holes, basically. So it will cut out the baseboard for you and cut out the wall itself. So when you're putting these doors in, you want to make sure that those boxes basically span your whole wall and cover the baseboard as well. So if you click this auto holes, you'll see that it's created a box and cut out the inside, but obviously because the box didn't fill the whole wall, it's not gone all the way through. So just make sure when you're putting these doors in that you scale those boxes, especially if you've got thick walls like my one, then you want to make sure those boxes are covering everything. And basically all that's doing is it's adding a Boolean modifier. So if you have any issues with that, just check your modifiers and basically select these boxes to make sure that it's using those to cut it out. So we're just going to scale that up and make sure that that is covering the whole span of the wall, which is perfect. And that's great. So there are a few things to think about with these doors. So if we just we'll grab this and have another little look. If we look in the door frame, there you go. So you can customize these quite a lot. You can obviously change the thickness of the door itself. You can change the width and the height of the door and all that. Just kind of bear in mind, if you're changing the thickness of the door frame, it's also going to change the thickness of the door. So I've played with this before and had kind of really fat doors as a result of changing the door frame thickness. So just keep that in mind as well. But if we have a closer look at this, there's a few more things you can do with it. So we'll have a look at the door frame, and you might see up in the top right you've got some options for models. So there's some different door models. You can see the patterns on the door themselves, and there's different handles as well. So feel free to have a look through and to change that stuff. Have a little look at the different handles as well. And yeah, you've got a few options. Some of these will kind of come with a glass material on part of the door as well, so it might be worth you looking in the kind of texture panel to see how that is going. If you enable cycles first in your render tab, which I didn't do here, you'll see that grayed out box just underneath the handle there. It will actually create materials for you, which is pretty handy. So there's that, and then also you can change which side the door opens, which at first doesn't seem too important, but if you have a look through, see you've got the inside of this door frame here. So do just kind of bear in mind, and actually it's something you probably never thought about, but if you look at your door frames, then you'll be able to see which side that door frame is, and just make sure you've got things open on the right side. So feel free to flip between those and choose the one that fits what you need. Right now I've got that door frame on the outside, so I'm just going to flip mine round and drag that back into place, and my outer door is kind of close to the edge of the wall there, so we'll pop that pretty close there, and then we'll scale these boxes up like we talked about and just make sure that that covers the whole thing. Again, I didn't notice at the time, but my frame is actually on the wrong side. It's kind of more natural for a front door to open inwards, but there we go. So that's all my doors in the ground floor. Quite happy with those. What you might notice though is that we're missing a few things. The baseboards are actually only put on one side of the wall because the tool is kind of designed to build rooms. So we can just grab existing baseboards, Shift D to duplicate, and we'll just drag those into place and kind of build out our missing baseboards like that. And just make sure not to kind of clip with the other ones so you don't get any weird artifacting when you render in the end. Because there's nothing worse than kind of going through a massive render and then noticing some weird creepy shadows in the corner of your room because you had some overlapping meshes that you didn't notice. But we just kind of go through and duplicate these, and obviously if this is too small for where you want to put it, you can always go into edit mode as well and just grab one of the edges, like we're doing here. So we just grab one of the edges and we'll extend that basically. We'll just grab it and move it on one of the axes, just like that, and we'll just kind of build out what we need and what we're missing from these baseboards. So we'll take a few minutes to go through and fix all our baseboards until we've got them running through the entire house, and those are looking good. And then we will move on to windows. So if we click this rail windows, you've got two kinds. You've got panels and you've got rails. Rails are closer to what I've got in my house, so I'm going to be using that. You've got options for kind of right leaf or left leaf, or two leaf as well. Two leaf again is closest to what I've got, so that's what I'm going to be using, but feel free to experiment. If we pull this out and we have a look at that, so do have a look. You've got some options in things you can do with this as well. So if you go back on that window frame, you can see you've got the option to add a windowsill or to add blinds. The sill, with this being a horizontal window, the sill is added at the bottom. Mine are actually vertical windows, so I'm not going to use any of that. I'm going to grab this window group and just rotate it. And at this point in your window frame, you can play with the kind of the size of it. You can give individual sizes to each window pane and to the whole thing as well. So just tweak it to how you want it. And we're going to pop this in our downstairs living room space. And again, you've got this bounding box. I'm going to be overly pedantic and measure it to get it perfect on mine because I've measured my whole house. But yeah, you've got this box around it, which is named control hole again. This is going to feed into that auto holes button that is on your rooms. So again, just make sure that hole covers the whole wall that you're putting this window on, basically, so that it cuts all the way through. And yeah, mine are looking pretty good there. They're quite deep on my ground floor. But I do want to give this a windowsill as well. So I'm going to press Shift S and cursor to selected, and then I'm going to add in a plane, and I'm going to use this to make myself a windowsill. So going into the item, I can change the dimensions manually. I know that it's 25 centimeters deep for me, so I'm going to add that in. And you can obviously then scale it and play with it how you want it. So I'll try and position this in the center of my window. And then I'm just going to scale it down on one of the axes and just kind of fit it just around the outside of my window there. So we'll position that so it's a bit more central, something like that. These handles are actually a little bit off center when you look at them vertically like this, so that's a bit misleading, but we can obviously use those boxes to kind of guide us a little bit, and that looks fine to me. So we then want to grab this and position it at the bottom of the window pane. But obviously we don't want it to just be a flat plane, so we're going to go into edit mode and grab that face, and we're going to extrude that upwards. And I'm just looking at the measurements on the z-axis in the top right, aiming for about 2.5 centimeters. That is fine. And then we're gonna add a bevel modifier to this to round it all off and make it a bit more realistic and curvy. And then we're gonna stick it at the bottom of the window, and then we're gonna drag the whole thing upwards and slot it into place on our wall, just like that. That is looking very good. I'm happy with that. There we go. So the next thing that we want to do is add in our kitchen doors. I've got big glass doors in the kitchen. For this, we're going to use panel windows. So if you click that panel window button, it's going to add another one of these, and we'll drag that into place. And for this, you can see is kind of much bigger, kind of French doors, panel window style. And you've got all the same sort of options. You can add windowsills, you can change how many windows, etc. are in there. So this basic one, you see at the bottom here, you can change the height of this row. So that's the height of the whole window, if you want to change that. And you can also change kind of individual widths of the different sections. You can change the thickness of the frames. You can change how many you've got horizontally. You can really kind of tweak everything. So feel free to play with this here and get something that you really want. But obviously for myself, I've got a kind of window on one side, window on the other side, and then double doors in the middle. Now what we could do is kind of make this a 4-panel window and change the individual widths of these, which would be fine, totally fine. And you can use those checkboxes underneath then to kind of make them deep. But actually what I'm going to do is to change this window panel, and we're going to use kind of a double door in the middle like this. We're going to get rid of that sill because I don't have it on the inside, and then we're going to check both of these boxes so that it's kind of inset, and we're going to change the height. So then we've got this kind of looking like a double door situation, which is what we're looking for, and we're going to pop that into our wall. And again, same situation, you've got this control box, which is going to govern what part of the wall is cut out. So remember to edit that when you're placing things. We'll just pop our double doors in the center-ish, somewhere around there. And then we'll come back and we'll measure this up later on, make sure it's precise. And then we're going to add in our windows for the side. So we'll just grab a basic window. We'll change the horizontal count to 1 and vertical count to 2. So we've got this smaller window on the top. You can obviously change the heights of each of these windows and the width at the bottom there. If you have a look and change these settings, that'll let you tweak these things. But we're going to basically try and line this up with the doors we've already got. So you need to account for kind of the width of the frame and that kind of thing. I did sort of measure this, but we'll take out the sill and just tweak the width, and then we're going to position that in place next to our door. So then I'm just going to tweak these values a little bit just to make sure that this lines up perfectly with the top of our door. So we just need to make this a little bit shorter. Basically we're accounting for that outer frame width. There we go. So we've got an outer frame of 5, so we need to reduce that measurement by 5 to match those up perfectly. And there we go, that's looking good. So once we're happy with that, we're going to grab that window group and Shift D to duplicate, and we're going to move it across on that axis and just line it up on the other side and try and mirror what we did on the left side basically. Something like that. There we go. And we'll just make sure this is also lined up perfectly. That's looking pretty good. Maybe just move that just ever so slightly. And there we go. We've got our kitchen windows. Now, just like all the other windows and doors, we need to go in here and grab this control hole and just make sure that that is covering the whole wall. So we'll go through and scale those boxes up and just make sure that we've got that whole wall covered, just like that. And then just final tweaks, and me being a bit of a perfectionist, I went back and measured this, and it turns out my doors are actually much too big. So I'm just gonna grab those doors, and we're gonna kind of scale the whole thing down a little bit, and just make sure everything is measured correctly and looking good. There we go, we just scale that down, and then we'll remeasure afterwards to make sure it's all right. Lovely, so that is our ground floor pretty much done. The one thing we are missing though is handles on those back doors, and luckily we've already got a handle on our windows. So I am literally just going to duplicate this and lift it and carry it over, and then we're going to basically assign it to those doors by adding it to the hierarchy, and we're going to position it on those door panels, and we'll line those up and get those looking lovely. Might just need to tweak this a little bit and inset them with those doors, but yeah, there we go. That's our handles basically done and looking fantastic. So with that, that's basically our downstairs looking as good as it's going to get. This is great. So ideally what we just need to do now is replicate what we've just done on the first floor, and fill out all of our windows and doors there next. So to do that, I am going to grab my living room window, make sure I grab the whole hierarchy, and I'm going to duplicate it, and we're going to drag that over to our first floor, and just check we've got that lined up nicely. And we're going to use this as a basis and basically go through exactly the same process as we did on our ground floor and fill out the whole of our first floor next. So there we go, that's our first floor done. We've just done exactly the same thing as we did downstairs. And once you've got this done, it's time to start putting those holes in the walls. So if we grab these walls and click that auto holes button, and you're probably going to have to go through each of the rooms and do this on every wall, and you'll start to see those lovely holes in the wall start to pop themselves through. It should cut the baseboards as well, but don't worry if not, you can always grab the room and then go into modifiers and check the booleans, and you'll just need to use the eyedropper tool and click on the baseboard or control baseboard, I think it's called, box that's around that section, and use that to basically cut out that section of the baseboard. So yeah, that is our basic structure ready to go. What we're going to do next then is we're going to change this render engine to cycles. Now we should have done this earlier on, I think I did mention it earlier, but if you had done this earlier on, not like me, then it would apply automatic materials to all your windows and doors and floors and that kind of thing as you added them in. But I'm actually going to be using some of my own materials when I'm doing this, so that isn't really a factor. But if you did want that, make sure you add in the cycles first. And again, I think I did mention this earlier, but you can see I'm missing some of the materials there. But we are just going to go through now and we're going to add in materials to all of our walls and our windows and our door handles and everything else. And just so we can see what we're doing, we'll go to our world tab and we'll add in a sky texture, just like that. There we go. So we've got a bit of sunlight so we can see exactly what's going on. If, like me, you can see kind of these boxes over your control holes, if you just search up in your scene collection, and we can just switch off this eye tool for each of the control objects, then that will make those disappear. They should automatically be off for your render anyway, so you can just go through and disable all of these so that you get a much better view of your scene. And then lastly, we need to add a floor. So if you click that checkbox in the top right for each of your rooms, I should say floors, that will add a floor, and it will give it this automatic tiled material as well, just to get you started off. Next then, we'll just go through and we'll start adding materials to everything in our scene. So we'll grab all the windows and add those materials and just go through and kind of assign a material to everything. You should have some default ones to work with. If, however, you don't like the color of the default one, so this is kind of the default wall, if you go into the shading tab, you should see some color here, and you can just change the color of these individual textures to change to how you like it, basically. So this is the wall texture. I just change this to like a 0 to make it white. You can see it'll just apply to all of your walls there, and obviously you can play with this and get exactly what you want there. For my flooring, I'm actually going to be using Blender Kit. I've got this add-on installed. There is actually a link in the description if you are interested. You can sign up totally free for the most part. They do have a paid option as well, but you can see on the right I'm not even logged in, and it's got about 12,000 materials on there that you can use completely for free, and just directly within the app as well. And if you do decide to sign up to the paid option, which gives you access to HDRIs and models and that kind of thing, you use my link, you'll get 10% discount off that, and that'll apply kind of anytime after you've subscribed using my link. So do feel free to check that out. But I'm just going to grab a basic floorboard material from Blender Kit and a carpet fabric material from Blender Kit, and I'm just going to drag those onto my floors, and that will automatically kind of map itself and scale itself correctly and apply itself to my floors. Obviously that's covering the entire floor right now, which is not what we want ideally, so we are just going to add in some loop cuts, and we're just going to use those loop cuts to assign different flooring to different rooms. So I've just lined up the cuts to match up with my doors and my walls, and we're going to select certain sections. We're going to add a new material, and then we're just going to use that floorboards material that we grabbed earlier, and that will assign it to those rooms. And then similarly in the upstairs, I'm going to assign this to the bathrooms. So again, I'm just going to grab these faces, add another material to the floor, and select that floorboards and assign it. So then we've got different flooring in different rooms in the house. And this is already starting to look good. It's starting to come together. There we go. So we've got a nice carpet in there as well. Now similarly with these Blender Kit materials, if you're not quite happy with the color or something similar, you can jump onto the shading tab, and you can, for example, add in a color ramp on this base color texture, and you can see straight away that's made that more white. You can obviously change these sliders, and you can add in kind of your own colors there and tweak them as you see fit. You can also play with the scale on the left and the map in there if it's kind of not looking right when you've dragged it in, and just kind of edit these textures however you want. So feel free to play with that as well. I've got quite white carpet, so we'll go with something like that. And then when we're all done, we just need to grab this first floor and stick it on top of our ground floor. So we'll line that up. Unfortunately, because of the solidifier modifier in the walls, I struggled to snap these two together. If you know how to get around that, by the way, whether you just need to apply the solidify before you try and snap, maybe, and I didn't try that at the time, I would be very, very keen to know how you can snap these together, because this is obviously quite tedious to kind of line them up manually. But there we have it. And we'll line our top and bottom floors up as best we can. And there you go. We've got our house with multiple floors, which looks fantastic so far, but not perfect. So you probably see that we've got some clipping going on through that floor, which is another unfortunate thing that might happen. The ceiling on the ground floor doesn't really block out those upper floors, which is quite annoying as well. Not ideal for multiple story buildings, I suppose. But let's go ahead and fix some of this clipping. So we'll go to a wireframe view from the side, and you can see some of these doors are unfortunately clipping through the floor. So we will have a look at those and just drag those up into place. On top of that, then you might still see some of these first floor walls clipping through into the ground floor. So I'm just going to duplicate that floor and drag it down a little bit to act as a ceiling for the lower floor. And there we go. We should be able to cover all of that quite nicely. And we'll just make sure that we've got a ceiling fabric on this, not the carpet fabric, because we don't want carpet on the ceiling because it's not the 70s. But there we go. That's looking much better. Lovely. So now we just want to add in some details, really. Obviously, first step will be getting from the bottom floor to the top floor, because currently it's just floating there, so we need to add in some stairs to do that. So from this side view, I'm going to add in a cube, and I'm going to position that cube where I want my stairs to be. And we'll just go ahead and we'll play with this. We will tweak it so that it fits the space nicely. I'm going to have kind of like a curved corner going up, and it's going to go through this downstairs wall as well. So I'm going to use that upper wall to kind of try and line that up there, which is great. And I'm also, because I want that corner of the stairs at the top, I'm going to add in a loop cut, and I'm going to position that where I want the top of my stairs to be, where I want the start of that corner to be. So around about here where I measured to, yeah, just about that. That looks fine. And then I'm going to scale this inwards as well to make sure that everything fits nicely within my corridor. So just about like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these top vertices, these two here, and I'm going to use the bevel tool to make my stairs. So with a Control B, drag that down there. And before you click off this, if we have a look at the menu here, you can go down to Custom at the bottom, and under Presets, you can actually select Steps straight away. And then you probably need to give it some more segments in your bevel to make that happen. And there you go. You got steps straight away. Now obviously if you want more or less steps, you can play with the position of these points, and you can really like drag these off to wherever you want them, and create your own shapes. Say if you wanted to make kind of molding next to your ceilings and that kind of thing, you can really like play with this to your heart's content and make whatever shapes that you want. So with my basic steps done, I've actually added some more steps in there. I'm actually going to come up to my top step up here, which I've extruded a little bit manually. I'm going to hit K to grab my knife tool, and I'm going to cut out my own step, just like that. We're going to hit Enter to accept this, and we're going to go into edit mode, grab this face, and we're going to hit E to extrude that. E to extrude that face upwards, just like that. Lovely. And then rinse and repeat. We'll add another little step in there, grab our knife tool, we cut out our step just like that, hit enter to accept, and then grab that face and extrude that upwards again to finish off our stairs. Now obviously at the moment you've still got some floors and ceilings and walls and stuff in the way, but for any of that stuff you can just grab it and use that same knife tool to cut out holes wherever you want them. So again, we'll just hit K, and this on our floor for example, we're going to use that wall there as a guide, and we are just going to cut out the shape of the top of our stairs so that we've got room for it to go up. And then any kind of walls or anything that's in the way, you can do the same thing. Just grab your object, grab the knife tool, and cut out the holes that you need. So after a little bit of tweaking then, we've gone through and cut out holes for our stairs, and just add in a little bit of details. We've been touching up our baseboards, and notice that at the base of our doors, we're missing the kind of metal separator that you get there. So we're just going to add in a cube, and we're going to scale this down and make that little metal bar that kind of pins your carpet to your wooden floors and stuff. I don't actually know what that's called, but we're gonna stick that in. So we'll scale that one down, and we'll slide that into place at the base of our door frame, and tuck that down into the carpet a little bit more. And then we'll grab both these edges and just give it a bit of a bevel to round it off like the real thing. And there we go, we've got our door separators. We're going to shade that smooth, and then we'll also give it our chrome material once it's in place, just to match our door handles. Once you're happy with all your little details and everything you've added, we then need to do a flyover to show it off. So I've positioned my camera when I want to start, and I'm going to add in a camera, and then I'm going to go view and then align active camera to view. So that'll position the camera exactly where my viewport was. And then with that, where we want it to start, we basically need to build a track for it. So we're going to Shift S and cursor to selected to start that off on the camera, and we're going to add in a Bezier curve. And this curve is basically going to be like, think of it like a roller coaster. This is going to be where your camera is going to follow. So you can build this track out basically and drag it through your entire house, and it's going to govern exactly where your camera is going to go. So I like to do this from like a top-down view so that we've always got the same height throughout the house. It just makes it look a little bit clearer in my opinion. But we're just going to keep extruding this, rotating these handles, and building a little track for our camera. And you should end up with something that looks a little bit like this, which from the top down is a bit intimidating, but that's kind of going through all the rooms, going down the stairs and kind of looping around the whole house to give you a good view of every single room. So once you're happy with the track that your camera is going to follow, we then need to attach the two of them. So in object mode, grab your camera, come to the constraints tab and add an object constraint for follow path, and then you're going to select this Bezier curve. Now if you move the offset, it should be following the path. Now if, like me, you've got this camera that doesn't want to listen to the rules and is flying off over here, there's quite a simple fix for this. You just need to grab your camera and go into the item settings and reset all the position values to 0, and it should snap back to your path just like this. Now the Bezier curve considers the end of the path as 0 in terms of the offset, so on your camera you'll want to set a keyframe for the offset at the first frame of your animation for -100, and then set another keyframe at the very end of your animation for 0. And then what you're going to do is basically go through this animation, and you're going to set some keyframes for rotation as you're going through, and you can use this offset to kind of govern the speed of the camera as you go through as well. So if you want to kind of slow down and have a look through a room, just make a keyframe of that offset and kind of slow down how quickly it's working through that offset. But as I said, we're going to go through and kind of take a snapshot of where we want camera to look and hit I to insert a keyframe. And we're just going to go through the whole house doing this until we are happy with the animation of our camera. And hopefully you should end up with some shots that look like this. I really hope you learned something. I found the Archimesh add-on really tricky to kind of get up to speed with at first when I started using it. So hopefully I've kind of broken down a few of the little quirks and stuff that you might get stuck on. Please do let me know what you thought about this tutorial. And more importantly, I'm now left with an empty house that obviously needs to be filled with my possessions. So the plan is to start modeling everything that's in my house and to slowly build up this model and fill it with all of the objects that you would find around a modern home. So if that sounds like something you might like to follow along for, to kind of learn as we go and model everything together, then please subscribe for more and check out the playlist. And obviously if there's anything that you'd like to see put into the house within reason, please do let me know, and I will see you next time.